It's 6 o'clock in the evening, and I've just parked at the side of a very busy highway in Florida. I'm meeting some guys named Kevin and Anthony.
Ready, Kev?
Born and raised.
Okay, you want me to drive?
It's up to you. Are we going up top?
You're going to hop in right now.
On top of Kevin's car is an aluminum platform. Whoa, that's dodgy. It covers the whole roof, and it has railings all around to hang on to. I'm supposed to get up on that roof, but there aren't very many ways to do that. Where the hell do you step up onto this thing?
Oh yeah, by the way, no fancy step on the tire, step on the roof, get the here.
Okay. The guy barking orders is Kevin Pavlidis. He's a bounty hunter, and he's in a hurry.
It's very bumpy up here, I'm gonna warn you from now.
Oh, this is fun. We're on a hunt, and it's one of the more bizarre situations I've ever found myself in.
At night, they'll come out to the edge.
Is that right? Why?
Because that's where the food is.
The food Kevin's talking about includes raccoons, opossums, and alligators. And we're here to catch what's eating them. Burmese pythons. Some of them are monsters, up to 20 feet long. They hide in the dense swamps. They swim in the canals and slink up along the levees, concealed in the brush.
They're buried up in there, and you'll be going along and everything looks like grass, and then all of a sudden there's just a dark tube or just a dark spot like that tucked up in the grass.
Here in the Florida Everglades, the Burmese python is an animal with a price on its head. It's an invasive species that's close to triggering an ecological collapse. But not if these python hunters have anything to do with it.
Stop! Python! Oh!
Python!
I thought it was dead, but it might actually be alive.
Yeah.
It's alive.
No, it's dead. It's been hit.
Oh no.
Yep.
No, it's alive.
No, it's alive.
It's alive.
It's alive.
Right.
Holy crap, mate! Today, the invasion of the Burmese pythons. From KUOW in Seattle, I'm Chris Morgan. Welcome to the wild. We're here in Florida talking about pythons. What do you think about pythons?
Oh my God. The pythons and the alligators are crazy.
I landed in Miami a couple of days ago and drove north to Fort Lauderdale. I'm on the beach, taking in the Atlantic Ocean. This is the east coast of Florida, a state that reaches down towards the tropics like a giant thumb. There's a guy running a barbecue stand by the beach. Do you like them being around?
No, I don't like snakes no time at all, man. They're crazy, man.
Just on the other side of the city, only 20 miles away, are the famous Everglades, python country. But even here, miles away from the entrance to the Everglades, pythons are a big deal. It seems like everyone's heard of them. Florida is snake country. There are over 40 native species here, compared to just 3 in my native homeland of the UK. If you've ever compared the weather at those two places, it's easy to understand why. Florida's weather and wetlands are what snake dreams are made of. But Florida is also home to snakes that don't belong here. The native home of the Burmese python is actually southern and southeast Asia, named after Burma, today the country of Myanmar, tucked between India and Thailand. Over there, it makes its home in rainforests, swamps, marshes, and grasslands. It's as comfortable in water as it is on land. Successful habitat generalists. It's not surprising Florida feels like home. It's actually home to over 40 invasive snake species. The Burmese python story that's evolved over the last 2 decades is shocking. They're huge compared to the native snakes in Florida. They can measure up to 20 feet and weigh 200 pounds. More than double the size of the largest native snake. In fact, they are one of the top 5 biggest snakes on Earth. The females lay up to 100 eggs, and they eat just about everything, from animals as small as a mouse to as big as a bobcat or an alligator. To date, no human has ever been killed by a wild living Burmese python in Florida, but it's not impossible. These snakes are found in suburban areas around humans, and they've certainly killed their fair share of cats and dogs. The first Burmese python in the Everglades was documented in the late 70s. It wasn't until the mid-90s that they started seeing them on a regular basis and recognizing that they were multiplying. The python numbers just kept growing.
And here we are today. We're in an emergency for our native wildlife here.
Mike Kirkland is a senior invasive animal biologist at the South Florida Water Management District, a government agency in charge of all things water, which in the Florida Everglades is almost 5 million acres of subtropical wilderness.
You wouldn't imagine how much trouble that they cause down here. In fact, when I first came to the Everglades, I thought that there was room for another apex predator in the Everglades. And now look at me. This has consumed my life, and I couldn't have been more wrong.
Mike remembers the first time Burmese pythons came onto his radar at work, about 6 years ago.
Our executive director at the time saw a video of a python holding an alligator underwater and drowning it. And the video went viral in January of 2017.
It is a battle of life and death, a rarely recorded glimpse at a Burmese python, an unwelcome addition to the Everglades, taking on the native alligator.
I can't believe that snake is dominating the alligator like that. This is incredible. I couldn't believe it.
And he called our bureau chief upstairs and said, "Hey, we need to do something about this problem. I know just what to do."
His idea was to give 25 people unprecedented access to the Everglades, bounty hunters.
And so our bureau chief came down with these marching orders and asked, "Who's the snake guy of the group?" And he said, "I think Kirkland's interested in snakes." And they really didn't know. But they put me into a small conference room, and they gave me this idea. "You want me to go and be in charge of a bunch of fellow snake catchers in the Everglades?" And I thought I might as well have won the lottery.
The South Florida Water Management District willing to pay 25 people to help capture the invasive species as part of their pilot python elimination program.
At the time, and still today, anyone can kill a python. Some people have practically made it a pastime. But Mike's official team gets paid for it. In addition to an hourly rate, each bounty hunter is paid by the foot. The first 4 feet of snake is worth $50. Then every additional foot is $25 after that. So a big one can pull in over $400. And their job is to capture and euthanize as many Burmese pythons as they can. The python elimination program was only supposed to be a 3-month trial. That was 6 years ago. It's now expanded to 50 contractors, and Mike's devoted his life to the effort of removing Burmese pythons from the Everglades.
I measure time now in BPP and APP, before python program and after. And my life will never be the same since I've started doing this.
In addition to Mike's 50 contractors, another organization called the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has 50 more. So a total of 100 people given keys to the Everglades. Literally, real keys that open gates to places no one else is allowed to go to catch and kill pythons. So I'm heading to meet Anthony and Kevin, 2 snake hunters. They dropped me a pin, and it is literally right on the edge of civilization where the metropolis ends and snake country begins. Anthony Flanagan and Kevin Pavlidis are 2 of the most skilled python hunters on Mike's team.
Morning, you all.
Good morning, guys.
Hop in your vehicle and follow me to where we're headed.
This is Anthony. I follow him a few miles to where he hopes to catch some pythons today. We pull over, and I clamber on top of his high truck platform to start our search.
Yeah, so the golden rule when we're moving, hold on. Always hold on.
Anthony's 50 years old. He's been hunting pythons for 15 years. He started even before Mike's official program began. and he's caught a grand total of over 900 of these massive invasive snakes. Mike says Anthony is one of his most valued hunters.
We call Anthony Flanagan the OG, the original gangster, and he is really a python whisperer. He doesn't have, biology degree like I do, but he has gotten this down to a science.
How does that tally with other people, other hunters?
Puts him at the very, very top.
This is a very good location. I've caught over 100 pythons off of this one stretch.
This location is classic Everglades. We're on a narrow road, what they call a levee, raised up next to a canal, and as far as I can see, there are vast expanses of marsh and tall sawgrass on either side of us.
The area you're going to want to look is where the low grass meets the taller sawgrass and stuff right on that edge, kind of like where my hand shadow is down there. The snakes will actually come out and like hang just a coil out when it's visible. So hold on. All right, Dad.
It's a family affair for Anthony. His dad is driving to help him out. We inch forward slowly on idle and start looking for snakes as thick as my thigh. It's a hot day, over 80 degrees and muggy. The sun is beating down. There are flies all around, and every so often we have to avoid poisonous overhanging trees. But we've got our eyes peeled from high up on the platform on top of the truck.
See, if you see that right there, that indentation in the rocks, that little flat spot, that's from a python.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's from one that's been basking.
How can you tell?
You could just tell by the way it's matted, like in the little tunnel at the back, where the snake kind of climbed out and coiled and basked.
You call them pads, that's where
we call them
beds.
Basking pads or breeding pads. That's a basking pad.
That's a huge snake that made that.
Oh no,
that
that's
spot.
probably that's 8-9 feet maybe.
Oh, it's a tiddler.
Oh, that's a little tiny thing.
The Everglades is one big wetland full of life. They cover an area 60 miles wide and 100 miles long. In fact, it's one of the largest wetlands on Earth. It's the source of water for over 8 million people. A mixture of marshes, little raised island forests called hammocks, pine, cypress trees, and mangroves. It's incredibly productive habitat and home to everything from turtles and bears to spoonbills and Florida panthers. 2,000 species of plants and animals in all, including 78 that are threatened or endangered. It's a subtropical wildlife paradise and just perfect for snakes, like the ones who've made it home here. Along with OG Anthony and his dad is another champion python hunter, Kevin Pavlidis.
Kevin is one of Anthony's proteges and is also one of the very best python hunters in the world.
Kevin actually caught the longest python in South Florida, 18 feet, 9¼ inches.
I actually have that capture footage on my YouTube channel, Snakeaholic.
Kevin's one of those larger-than-life characters. He's 25 years old, and when he's not out catching Burmese pythons, he's an alligator wrestler at a local tourist attraction. Oh, I would love to see that.
Yeah, it's
Snakeaholic.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great name.
If it can kill me, I want to play with it.
I don't think that he drinks nearly as much caffeine as I do, but I don't know where his energy comes from. It's just, another very passionate person.
So Kevin, can you describe what you're looking for in here?
Anything, honestly. The way that we typically phrase it is anything that's out of place. Anything that doesn't look like Everglades.
We duck our heads down low to avoid the poisonwood branches. This is serious business. Invasive species are one of the top 5 conservation problems in the world. When species that don't belong in a particular ecosystem start to multiply, they can have disastrous effects. And here, it's seen in what the pythons eat.
We're seeing a 95% reduction in fur-bearing animals in Everglades National Park, the surrounding natural areas. I challenge you even to go to Everglades National Park and find a single fur-bearing animal, a single squirrel, raccoon, fox, possum, deer. doing nothing is not an option.
Ecologists and people like Mike, Anthony and Kevin on the front lines feel like it's only a matter of time before the house of cards comes tumbling down. Because the snakes are eating so many native prey species that other native predators need to eat. Not to mention the fact that the pythons occasionally eat endangered species too. So it's become a multi-million-dollar, year-round effort with federal and state funding to rid the Everglades of the pythons. Burmese pythons are called constrictors because they wrap their bodies around their prey, squeezing it to death. Just like a boa constrictor does. They can live to be 25 years old. They're only a couple of feet long when they're born, but in their first year, they can grow to be 7 feet. But even when you're looking in the right spots, finding them is still a struggle. And because they're so hard to find, Mike says it's impossible to actually know how many pythons are out there.
Our biggest management obstacle for them is detection. Because they're so hard to detect, they're so cryptic, they're so well camouflaged in the environment, coupled with the vastness and relative inaccessibility of the Everglades, we can't do a conventional population estimate on the species. You hear numbers thrown out there like 100,000 or 1 million. We just don't know.
Pythons have long, slick bodies. Their skin is covered in intricate rhythmic patterns, full of blacks, browns, and yellows. They blend in with the sawgrass perfectly, so much so that you can have a python 2 inches away from your face and not even see it.
Yeah, actually we had one like that this year. Where just found a patch of really, really thick grass, and I got out and started walking around in it, and as I was walking, all of a sudden I just heard
What was that?
That's what I wanted to find out. So I was like, what made that noise? And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm standing on, but it doesn't feel like grass. It's like harder. So I started bouncing up and down on it, kind of wiggling over it. And I just turned and yelled up to Anthony. I was like, hey, Ant, I don't know what I'm standing on, but it's not grass. And I don't want to get off of it until I have backup, just in case. And he came down there, and sure enough, I was standing on a 13-footer.
Really?
Yep. But it's interesting too, in those scenarios, you'd think they would take off, but if the grass is thick enough, most of the time they sit perfectly still as a reflex and hope that you get off of them and walk away.
Right, they're just relying on their camouflage, huh?
Yeah. It's incredible how quickly they can disappear.
They lie in the brush, waiting, or they actively stalk their prey. A body that has taken 15 million years to evolve to help them succeed. The snake feels even the tiniest of vibrations in the ground from a passing target like a bird or a mammal. Then it pinpoints the prey with chemical receptors in its tongue. Sensors along the snake's jaw detect heat. Then boom, the snake strikes, grabbing its prey with rows of sharp teeth. 2 rows on the top, 1 row on the bottom, 100 or more of them. But they're not venomous. Once they've grabbed the prey, they use their long body and wrap it around the victim and squeeze. Every time the victim exhales, the python squeezes tighter until the prey is basically suffocated. Then their jaw stretches wide to swallow their meal whole. As we drive the levee, eyes peeled, Anthony tells me what happens after they catch their prey.
They're very tactile, whatever brushes up against them or gets within striking range, they'll make a grab.
Have you ever seen a snake with a hefty lump in the middle of its body?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
And what was it, do you think?
Well, I know from the snakes regurgitating them after I captured them, it's been everything from opossums to birds to rats.
Did you say when you caught one it regurgitated? Mm-hmm. Is that
That's a natural defense mechanism. When an animal has just eaten, and especially if it's a very large prey item, the snake is vulnerable. It can't move quickly. It can't slink through vegetation quickly because it has a big lump in its body.
Right.
So if it gets threatened by imminent danger, it naturally will regurgitate what it has eaten so that it can move quicker and escape.
It strikes me how difficult the hunting is. I half expected to be jumping on a snake every 10 minutes from the stories I'd heard. But even with 2 of the top python hunters in Florida, these snakes are remarkably elusive. After 2 different locations and 6 hours of searching, no luck. It turns out that this snake hunting is not as easy as I expected. I think these guys are too good at it. There's no snakes. You've caught them all, Kevin.
Working on it.
So we make a plan. We're going to regroup tonight. Anthony sends us another location pin. This time, the edge of a busy highway running east to west across the Everglades.
We'll meet there. We'll hunt from 5:45 till about maybe 8:45.
Perfect.
And then we'll call it.
So we weren't able to catch a snake this afternoon with the guys, but we're going back out this evening. It's about 5:30 now. Sunset is about 6:15. So we're hoping that because it's been such a hot day, the snakes weren't out. It was too hot even for a snake today. So now, darkness approaching, we're hoping the snakes will be out and give us another chance to catch one. So that's the dream. We're feeling hopeful. It's dark, and we're on the side of a busy highway, slowly driving the grassy verge. Kevin's got huge lights attached to the railings on the top of his car, pointed straight at the sawgrass along a canal. After another hour of scanning the edge.
Stop! Python!
Oh! Python!
I thought it was dead, but it might actually be alive.
I can hardly believe it. There it is. A huge python coiled up on the side of the road.
No,
it's alive.
It's alive.
It's alive. It's alive.
I jump off the truck. Kevin tells me to be fast before she has a chance to disappear or strike.
You're gonna have to grab it right behind the head.
And to grab her behind her head so she can't twist and bite me. So I dive in,
Don't let go, don't let go.
Okay, I got it.
grab the snake.
Holy smoke, look at that, wrapping around me already.
My heart's pounding, and as I lift her up, she starts to react. She's going a little crazy now. That's unbelievable. She's looking for something to wrap around. Look at that. She had my leg and my wrist earlier on. She's getting really, that is unbelievable just to feel the strength in her body as she's raising up off the ground like that. She's over 10 feet long. I guess she weighs over 30 pounds. Can I stand up with her?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, she is heavy. Oh my goodness. As I hoist her up, I notice something in the middle of her body. A big lump, like the size and shape of an American football. We find out later that the bulge in her stomach is an opossum. You can kind of hear that hollow sound of her belly when I tap it gently. That's the creature inside. A native species that's important food for so many creatures in the Everglades. She had swallowed the opossum whole and was digesting it when we found her coiled up on the ground. Oh, I could feel her digestion going there. She's got like air pockets down through her belly.
This was actually eaten during the day today. And that's why this snake was out, is because this snake was actually trying to catch some of that evening sunshine, that afternoon sunshine, to heat up to help digest this big prey item that's in here. Normally,
it's a strange moment. My adrenaline is still pumping. I can't believe I'm holding such a magnificent creature. A muscular body squeezing my arm so tight, it's about to cut off the circulation. She's like some mythical serpent in my hands, powerful beyond belief. But it's also her last day of life. It's not her fault she ended up here. But then Kevin reminds me of the bigger picture.
This is the last animal that he is going to eat from our Everglades ecosystem, and that's what it's all about, man. It's just protecting those native animals.
But how does it make you feel on the other side of things as somebody who loves snakes? You're looking at this creature, it's just exquisite in every way, isn't it? It is a feat of evolution, this thing, looking at it.
It's always bittersweet because I've loved Burmese pythons since I was a child, and you really have to choose, because if you leave them alone, the native animals die.
Right.
If you remove them, you have to kill the invasives,
Right.
but there's no solution where nothing dies.
It was amazing to hold her there, feel the weight of her in my arms. But you can't help but think about what's going to happen next. The end of her life. but another threat to the Everglades removed. We carefully place her in a bag.
And the last thing you're gonna let go of is the head, and just plop it in there. And we're gonna tie this up nice and tight. Now we're gonna grab that second bag. Hold that open for me.
Okay, the second
That all to the bottom. Bag goes in the lockbox, so we're full legal and in compliance with all of our permits and everything.
Kevin and Anthony and Mike, their lives are devoted to this Python program. I can see it takes not just skills and stamina, but an ability to focus on the bigger picture. It's a lot to get my head around. The problem, the people devoted to fixing the broken ecosystem, the future. So, like personally, what's your relationship with this snake, with the Burmese python?
This project has really consumed me, and it's become part of my identity even, and same with a lot of the hunters, you know. But if I could get rid of all the pythons today, I would. And I don't have any tattoos, but if I ever got one, it would have to be of the Burmese python. And I look forward to the day when they're not in the wrong place like they are here.
So, where did these snakes come from? And how did they get here?
Exotic pet trade in general is a huge business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And Miami is really ground zero in the United States for the import of exotic pets.
Coming up, we'll dig into what brought them here in the first place, the exotic pet trade, plus how science is being used to try and solve what seems like a losing battle. When an invasive species enters an ecosystem, it can have massively detrimental effects to the native animals living there. According to the National Wildlife Federation, over 40%, that's 40% of threatened or endangered species across the world are at risk simply due to invasive species being where they shouldn't be. In South Florida, the Burmese pythons are eating just about everything when it comes to native mammals. Most of the raccoon, opossum, rabbit, fox, and even bobcat populations have dropped dramatically. Yes, bobcat claws have been found inside pythons. So I've come to meet the researchers who are trying to learn more about these giant snakes. Dr. Melissa Miller and Sam Smith are biologists from the University of Florida. They're using radiotelemetry to keep track of the pythons by inserting tracking devices into their bodies and then letting them go back into the Everglades. Wait, is this your truck?
That's my truck.
This is Sam. And that's where the goodies are?
Yeah, they're in the back seat. They were hissing the whole way here. In the back seat?
Really?
Yeah. They're in boxes, but they're not just like hanging out in there.
In the back of Sam's truck are two big black containers, like super strong totes. They're double locked with padlocks and marked with huge words, dangerous, prohibited reptiles. That's where the snakes are kept on their drive to the release site. Before we head out, Sam cools the snake down by pouring some water from her water bottle into the little holes in the lid of the crate.
A little bit of water for the cause.
These big snakes are semi-aquatic after all. You can hear her hissing as she deeply exhales. We hop in the car to drive to where she'll be released. One of the main goals of Sam and Melissa's research is to learn about how the pythons are using their environment. If you look out across the vast expanse of the Everglades, it might seem like it's all just marshy wetland for miles and miles. But inside of that ecosystem, there are actually tons of different types of habitats. Tree islands, sawgrass marsh, cattails, levees, canals. The Burmese pythons move between all of these different habitats year-round. So Melissa and Sam are trying to figure out where they are at what times of the year. And they can use that information for targeted removal efforts of the pythons to try and get on top of the invasion.
Often people think like, oh, well, let's just fix it. You know what I mean? Like humans can fix it. You know, oh, if we ruin the water, if we ruin the air, like we can just fix it. Some things you can't fix.
This is Melissa, the other biologist from the University of Florida. But with the telemetry program, Melissa and Sam hope the information they're learning will bring them one step closer to tackling the problem. Back in the truck, Melissa prepares us for releasing the hissing python they've brought. It's 16 feet long and not very happy.
This snake is pretty feisty. This is one that we got from a contractor, and it had actually eaten a 6-foot alligator and regurgitated it the next morning. So it had, a giant lump in it. You could see like where the alligator's limbs were folded back because they eat the animal head first.
That is insane.
We have
I'm
pictures too.
speechless.
We've got pictures too. I thought it was a different snake, but yeah, Sam was just.
The alligator she ate was a native species, one that the bounty hunters and these scientists are trying to protect. They measured the gator after the snake regurgitated it, 6 feet long and 44 pounds. The Burmese python is upending the food pyramid here in the Everglades, totally disrupting the typical order of operations. It's through a phenomenon ecologists call a trophic cascade. In the Everglades, the typical food pyramid works like this. Alligators are at the top, and they eat what's under them. Anything from medium-sized mammals like deer and bobcat to smaller mammals like rodents, mice, and rabbits. But when the Burmese pythons entered the ecosystem, they started eating animals from bottom to top, decimating the lower levels of the food pyramid and disrupting the natural order. They've wiped out the mid-sized mammals. They've eaten lots of the larger mammals too, like the bobcats and deer. And they've even preyed upon the larger predators, like the American alligators. The problem is that when a small link in this food chain is broken, the impacts can have ripple effects that are felt across the ecosystem. Researchers don't yet know how the Everglades food pyramid will rebound and make up for the loss of roles played by all these different missing animals. But one thing's clear. One layer of that food pyramid is now almost completely gone. We pull up to the spot where we're going to release the snake. It's a long levee right next to the highway with a canal on the other side of it. Melissa and Sam tried to release the snakes in the same exact places where they were captured.
Snakes have an amazing ability to, like if you released it somewhere far away from where it was captured, a snake will typically try to get back to where it was captured. And
so this snake knows this neck of the woods, as it were?
This is the area where the contractor captured it.
We lift the container with the python out of the truck, and Sam opens up the padlocks, and there's a tan bag inside. As she unties the bag, I can see a few inches of stitches running along the snake's body. This incision here, she's been, what? Is that?
So the tags, the radio telemetry tags that were put in the python, each snake gets 2, and that's incisions from where that happened.
The tags are shaped like cylinders with antennae, each a bit bigger than a AA battery. And on the outside of the incision is a pink label to let the bounty hunters know this snake needs to be left in the wild. It's a tricky thing, though, because right now, Melissa and Sam are doing the opposite of what their goal is. Their goal is to get as many pythons out of the Everglades as possible. And now, here they are, releasing one.
Honestly, like when you release a snake, there comes with it a burden of making sure you're conveying the message of why. Like the contractors caught the snake, typically they're euthanized, and then a lot of the public, for example, have issues with like, why are you releasing it again? You know, so it's on the researchers to make sure that message is getting out there of like the data that can be gathered from the snake.
Melissa and Sam have asked me to help today, and as a snake lover, I'm only too happy. Wow, she is huge. Good? Sam has told me to be quick before the snake strikes, so I grab her neck with my hand right behind her huge head. It's the size of a big burrito. Oh. Shall I lift her out?
Yeah, so you can grab that coil.
Wow. We lift her body, and she's immediately coiling around my legs. Sam hoists the heavy middle section.
That is like arm wrestling a very strong person.
And we manage to place her down on the grass. We step away quickly to avoid being bitten. They're not venomous, but apparently their bite doesn't leave just holes, but a big bruise too. She calms right down, and it gives me a chance to really admire her. I just kind of overwhelmed and honoured to see a creature like this and to be able to touch it and see it, and it's not its native habitat, but it's where it's calling home. It's really hard to describe. I mean, it's slithering around like some mythical creature right now, you know, just like those that you see in the storybooks. I can still hear her hissing. She's about 10 feet away now. She instinctively moves through the sparse grass towards the thicker vegetation of the Everglades marsh, and without hesitation, she's at the water's edge. One more 16-foot slither, and she disappears into a waist-deep swamp.
She's probably going to go over there and lay low for a little bit, having just gone through the surgery and the capture and release and all of that. So yeah, we'll have the first data point on her tomorrow.
I can tell Melissa feels conflicted about seeing the python being released.
It's a beautiful animal, and it's not its fault that it's here. So it's kind of a shame what happens to a lot of the ones we capture, but it's cool to see some getting released and increasing the knowledge we know about the species.
Mm-hmm. So. I can see you have mixed emotions about it.
Yeah, I mean, because we get into this because we like snakes, you know what I mean? So you don't want to have to euthanize any animals, especially not a beautiful animal like Burmese pythons. So it is hard, but there's a bigger picture at hand with the Everglades ecosystem, and you know, it's the card we're dealt, and we're trying to help the ecosystem as a whole.
The female we've released joins other scout snakes, as they call them. They could be the key to a window into their lives that wasn't available before, leading researchers to more and more pythons and the prey bases that they're consuming. Researchers have even now taken to radio tagging prey species like raccoons and opossums so they can find the pythons that eat them. Burmese pythons first came to Florida from Southeast Asia through the exotic pet trade in the 70s. Over the next few decades, it became a huge industry, a multi-billion-dollar business. It's estimated that nearly 100,000 pythons were imported into the United States from the 90s to the early 2000s. And because of its subtropical location, Miami was a hotspot. And it wasn't just Burmese pythons that made their way to Florida this way. A total of 35 non-native snakes came here from other countries through the pet trade and have since been found in the wild. But it's the Burmese python that's the most destructive. And here was the problem. A 3-foot pet Burmese python might be okay, but what happens when they get to 6 feet, 8 feet, 15 feet? Well, people just let them go, or they escaped. And on top of all of this, a hurricane. Back in August of 1992, Hurricane Andrew swept across Florida. A Category 5 storm that trashed everything in its path, including a python breeding facility. Out the snakes slithered into the Everglades, only too happy to make this warm, marshy wetland full of food their new home. I'm back with Melissa Miller and Sam Smith, the two biologists from the University of Florida, because once snakes are released, the task of tracking them begins. We're going to head into the swamp to locate a big python they released a couple of months ago. The animals out here are pretty different from those I know in the Pacific Northwest, so I have to ask, What do I need to know? What's going to bite or snag or coil around us? Anything to be aware of?
There are cottonmouths, venomous snakes, water moccasins also. They all the same thing. There could be some gators.
So we're okay. Only alligators and venomous moccasins.
Yeah. Oh wait, and the sawgrass is sharp.
Okay. so nothing to worry about here.
Yeah.
Just
and if we're successful, we're going to see a big python.
And that's got the animal
no danger
rescue.
there either. So.
We walk along the edge of the levee, and Sam chooses a gap in the tall vegetation for us to enter the marsh. We need to get within 10 feet of the snake for Sam to plot it on a map. They only have home ranges of about half a square mile, so every foot of accuracy helps. Even better if we can actually eyeball the python. Sam goes first with her radio receiver. All right behind you, Sam. This is where we leave dry ground. I step in, and immediately my legs sink into deep mud and water, up to my waist. It feels a little mad to even be in here. A swamp full of alligators and giant snakes. And then every step is tricky to lift your foot out of once you've placed it. Oh my goodness. It smells earthy, like tree bark. It's because there are hundreds of years of decaying plant matter that I'm disturbing under the water that's surfacing in air bubbles.
Whoa, yeah, that's a deep hole.
Yeah. It's very slow going. I'm trying to grab onto something, anything, to keep my balance. But the only thing around is sawgrass.
Oh my goodness, and the sawgrass is really sharp. You run your hand down it the wrong way and it cuts you. Is this normal, Sam, this deep, this kind of going when you're tracking them?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, this is a bit shallower than,
This is shallower?
well, a little bit.
So, Sam's got the receiver to her ear right now. It's up there, arm's length, and the snake is somewhere ahead. We don't know quite where, but it's up there somewhere, and it is unbelievable. I can hardly see the hand in front of my face through these reeds.
We're getting closer.
Getting closer. I think you said that 20 minutes ago.
Sam and Melissa do this kind of telemetry tracking year-round, but there is special information they can gather right now, during February, because it's breeding season. When a female python starts nesting, she stays with her eggs for 2 or 3 months. They can track when and where she started nesting, how many eggs she has, and how long she stays with them. Reproductive information that's key to controlling a creature that can have 100 youngsters at a time.
Slide.
How does it make you feel being in here?
I mean, it's definitely a little bit nerve-wracking.
In terms of what? Why?
I mean, you've just got things like gators out here. I would just hate to put my foot in like a gator hole or something like that.
What is a gator hole?
So they'll like kind of burrow under. I think they can go pretty deep.
Good to know. Gators pick places to dig under and create large holes, pockets that can hold water during the dry season. I'm wondering how close the nearest alligator might be.
Have you ever run into one out here?
No, not yet. So hopefully today's not the day.
But turns out, today is the day.
What? What?
We hear a gator,
Growling at us. Hey, okay, we should back up.
and it's growling at us. The alligator sounds like it's only about 10 feet away, right between us and the python, defending its territory. It's making a sound called bellowing. I catch it faintly on my recorder.
Right, it sounds like. Where do we go? Go back up.
It's not common for them to bellow. Typically, they'll just take off silently. So this one seems a bit aggressive. So
What's the issue? What could happen?
Oh, well, you know, if he's not happy that we're here, could charge us. But they're also great swimmers, so you know they could come through the water as well. of course.
Sam sounds very chilled, but I can see she's nervous. An aggressive alligator is not to be taken lightly. They attack about 10 people per year in Florida. These living dinosaurs are very fast and very hard to see. We're so close to the snake, but we're running out of daylight, and alligators are nocturnal.
But judging from my signal, the snake's very close, so whether or not we see him, but I still get a pretty good data point.
In other words, time to head back. Sam and Melissa say it's just not worth the risk. The wet slog back to the truck begins, following the GPS route every step of the way. Hey. It's ironic that the native species this team is trying to save is the one that aggressively pushes us out of the swamp. There are so many ups and downs in this everyday fight for Sam and Melissa, but big things are at stake. The Burmese python problem in the Everglades is one very vivid example of the devastation an invasive species can have on an ecosystem, and how difficult it is to collect information about those impacts.
I really like the quote, I think it's attributed to Joe Podgard, and it's, "The Everglades is a test, and if we pass, we may get to keep the planet."
It's taken millions of dollars and tons of people out here every day to solve what seems like a losing battle. I've got to say, who cares, you know? What about those people that just say, why don't you just let nature take its course and leave the snakes alone?
Because it's not nature taking its course. This isn't nature, so these snakes would have never got here on their own. And it's ultimately due to humans, and you know, it's kind of, you have a duty as a human to, you know, to try to do something to protect the Everglades. I mean, I can't just not do anything about it.
Is this something that is a losing battle, or is it worth fighting for with these Burmese pythons?
With the current control tools we have on hand, we've removed quite a few snakes. I believe there's over 17,000 from the state that's been removed. But as far as eradication, with the current tools we have, no. They're in the interior of the Everglades, so we can remove a whole bunch from the levees. But ultimately, in the interior of the Everglades, we're not doing anything. And it is challenging. You saw when we were walking out there today. You know what I mean? It's not easy to find a python. And just think how long it took us to go such a short distance just to go through that marsh.
Yeah.
And you know, we were looking for one python.
Like, and then you look out to the horizon,
yeah,
and it's endless Everglades. You
right?
know, and we covered a few hundred yards. It's just insane to think about them all out there.
So right now, I mean, eradication of pythons completely from Florida is not feasible. But if you give up, then what?
Melissa said it first. Eradication is not a solution. It's just not possible at this point. It's too late. But the hope is that someday something will work as the fight continues to prevent things from getting worse. It's said that invasive species the world over may be as damaging to native species and ecosystems as habitat loss and destruction. Whether it's foxes eating marsupials in Australia, cane toads munching their way across the Caribbean, or, dare I say it, English ivy taking over a Pacific Northwest forest. Invasive species are a force to be reckoned with for today's conservationists, and for all of us. You never know what you might unleash, from a plant seed on your hiking boot to a voracious predator from your aquarium. Every species comes from somewhere, but they don't belong everywhere in our intricate world of ecosystems. The wild is inspired not just by nature, but by the people who work in it, love it, protect it. The Wild is a production of KUOW in Seattle and me, Chris Morgan, with support from Wildlife Media. Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Matt Martin. Jim Gates is our editor. A very special thank you for their kind financial support to Jill and Scott Walker, Rose Letwin, Alan Ferguson, Anna Kimball, John Taylor, Paul Lister, Mark Wilkins and Rebecca Badger, Bob Yellowlees, Barbara Stallman, and Annie Mize. Our production team includes Paul Bikes, Juan Pablo Chiquiza, April Craig, Michaela Gianotti-Boyle, Tatiana Latre, Kara McDermott, Darcy Riggins-Schmidt, and Brendan Sweeney. Our theme music is by Michael Parker. I'm Chris Morgan. If you enjoy The Wild, maybe share it with a friend or leave a review. It really makes a difference. We're out to inspire as many people as possible. Thanks so much for listening.